This is Library Nerds with Words, the podcast that gives you the word on all the cool, nerdy happenings at Peter White Public Library and the library universe beyond. From books and concerts to search engines and story times, the library nerds are in and ready to show you that being a nerd can be cool. Get ready, get set, get nerdy. Welcome back to Library Nerds with Words, the podcast that gives you the word on all the cool things going on at Peter White Public Library and the library universe beyond, straight from the people who know it best, library nerds. My name is Marty Ackett, and I'm the Adult Programming Coordinator for Peter White Public Library. Joining me in NEH, that's Nerd Election Headquarters again today, is everyone's favorite library nerd all-star, Lynette Suckow, the Assistant Head of Adult Services. Welcome back to the podcast, Lynette.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
You know, I'm always happy to get down and nerdy with you, Lynette. Now, the last time you visited the podcast, you elected to talk about thrillers, those books that keep you on the edge of your reading seat. Now that we are 1 month into our fall season, things are really heating up at PWPL with book groups kicking off for 24-25, concerts, author readings, and of course, all the wonderful book displays at PWPL that the staff puts together. In fact, I would vote for PWPL as the most exciting place to be in the Marquette area. Yes, all of those not-so-subtle clues are about what Lynette will be talking about in just a few minutes. But we're not ready to declare a winner just yet. Another clue. Because we have to play another game of Word on the Nerd. You know how this works, Lynette. I'm going to ask you 3 library nerd questions, and you have to answer them for the listeners. So, Lynette, are you ready to play
Word on the Nerd?
Lynette, this is going to be another game of Would You Rather. I'm going to ask you 3 Would You Rather questions, and you have to truthfully answer them for the listeners. And all of the questions today have something to do with voting, elections, and U.S. presidents. All right. So let's get started. Here's your first question. Maybe this is an easy one. Would you rather vote in person or would you rather vote absentee ballot?
Well, if you vote in person, you get to go see the people in your neighborhood. However, if you go at the wrong time of day and you don't know anybody there, it's kind of a bad experience. And I don't like being in crowds of people. And so, you know, if they would just stay a little bit behind me and not right on my heels, I'd like that
when
better.
You have them breathing down your neck?
Do not breathe your germs on me or your bad breath or whatever, you know.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so I also don't want to be surprised if I go to the polls and there was a question that I wasn't prepared for, because you can find the ballot, but then you have to do extra research.
Right.
If you're an absentee voter, the ballot will be sent to your home, and then you can research everything there and be prepared to mark the correct places on the ballot and then send it back in. I just walk mine into City Hall because it's so close, and then I'm sure it gets there because my vote counts.
Yeah.
I just did a display that said every vote counts.
Absolutely.
And I truly believe that even if you don't vote the way I want you to. Now, if you ask me, I would tell you how to vote.
Yeah.
But that's not really
I
legal.
would too, but that's not legal. So, but yeah, you know, I've gone both absentee and in person. Usually, on other elections, I might do absentee. Presidential elections, for some reason, I like going in and sitting down and doing it that way.
Oh.
I don't know why. It's just, you know.
Well, yeah, you're more a part of the whole movement. There's a mood there, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like a community thing, and
yes.
you know. And maybe I don't like the community that I'm voting with, but, you know, it's fine. So, yeah, if presidential elections, I will say in person. But any other election, I'm fine with absentee ballots. And it's not because I don't trust absentee ballots. I trust them completely. It's just a personal thing for me. So,
well, how about this? What if you're a little bit paranoid and you're thinking, if I wait until election day, what if someone disrupts the election? And I wouldn't be allowed to vote because my polling place has been surrounded, by the bomb squad or something. God. And so this is really crazy of me. Only because
this is like a conspiracy theorist.
Well, you know how I love mysteries.
I know you love mysteries. I will say this. When for presidential elections, I'm usually like there at 7 a.m. I put my vote in. Good. I get it done. And then I'll go on to
I'm
work.
more like the 4 p.m. person.
Yeah,
so.
I'm up early enough. I got to get my kid to work, to school. So I'm figuring I'll just go and do this, get it done. And I like being like number one and number two.
When my kids were young, I did the same thing. Yeah. I put that on the list. Priority for today.
Yes, exactly.
I will go and vote.
And vote. Okay, well, there you go. All right, now, as you know, the questions might get a little bit more difficult from here on out. So here's your second question. Would you rather go back in time to vote for Abraham Lincoln, or would you rather go back in time to vote for John F. Kennedy?
Well, I like both of those presidents, and they're so famous. I mean, sometimes when you read more about them, you read about their personalities, and then you don't like them as much as you did before you knew just what they're famous for.
Yeah.
So I don't think women had the vote during Abraham Lincoln.
Well, let's say that they did. Let's just say they did, Lynette. Okay? Let's just say they did.
So he was a little bit... there is a book here that I should go over later, but I'll tell you right now about the Lincoln Miracle. I would have voted for him.
Okay.
He was really not the favorite at all, but he just kept in the game, and he didn't drop out, and he wasn't intimidated by the people who said, you're not the person we're choosing. We want this other person to be in the race, not you. So there's that whole thing, which is covered in this book called The Lincoln Miracle, Inside the Republican Convention That Changed History.
Wow.
So it's, significant, a good story in there. John F. Kennedy was also an underdog because he was Catholic and Democrat.
Right, and he was going up against, the vice president. He was going up against Eisenhower's vice president, Nixon, at the time.
Yes.
So, in some ways, it's, So you would vote for Lincoln.
Well, I just think maybe he needed help a little bit more. Actually, I don't know the results of either of those elections, like if they were overwhelming or not.
I think that actually the Kennedy-Nixon election was closer than people remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was a kid,
it was the debate, the televised debate that put Kennedy over the top, I think, because Nixon looked sweaty and uncomfortable, and John F. Kennedy and John F. Kennedy just came in and looked like John F. Kennedy, looked like a movie star. So I think I would do the Lincoln thing and do it that way too. So, although there are things about both Lincoln and Kennedy that might not be so admirable, but there are things that they did that you wouldn't look up to. But if I was going to do that, it would be Lincoln. So
me too. I don't know what it is. It's just that draw. I've always admired him, maybe because what he stood up for was slavery. Like, do not own another person, please. Then thank you very much. And so that is really important to me, the equal value of every person. So that would have been a big, big issue for me to vote for. And for Kennedy, I'm not sure what he ran on, but then he ended up doing civil rights stuff.
Right.
And think about not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That call for service. I really, really like that a lot.
And then another thing I like about Kennedy, he was the first president to have a poet speak at his inauguration, too.
No way.
Yeah, he was the first one. He had Robert Frost at his inauguration.
Robert Frost?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to do some reading here.
Yeah. Kennedy was the first one to have a poet recite a poem.
Oh, my gosh.
So,
wow, that's pretty endearing.
I have a soft spot for Kennedy for that, especially since he had Frost there, so... Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. So, last question. Would you rather be a candidate for President of the United States Or would you rather be a candidate for governor of the state of Michigan?
Well, I think I wouldn't like traveling that much. So maybe the governor of Michigan, so I would be a little more local and have, honestly, I'm not Kamala Harris, who has every fact imaginable in her head. She is a genius.
Yeah.
I don't have that capacity. I'm more of a, that's why I'm a reference librarian, because I can look things
It up.
But to just spout out like in a debate, I'd be going, I'll get back to you.
Let me check on that one.
So that would be less to remember. In a national campaign, you have to be up on everything.
Yeah.
And so that would just be daunting for me, not just because I'm old, but at any age. It's just not my way of learning and retaining information. I'm a terrible memorizer. Sometimes in a song, but other times I just make up my own words because I can't remember the ones that were there.
Yeah. And I don't know if during a debate, if you broke into song, they would really like that. You know?
Hey, that's an idea.
I would actually think that'd be very entertaining, but I don't know if that would work. I would never want to be president of the United States. I think that those candidates are under so much scrutiny. I wouldn't want that
too. You know, I lived in California a long time ago, and maybe they would try to dig something up on me there, although there was nothing, let me tell you.
Yeah, well, that's it. You know, the state of Michigan, you know, I've lived here my whole life. I've lived in the state of Michigan whole life.
Yeah.
I think I can deal with that.
Yeah.
But you never know. I mean, political campaigns are so strange. They dig up such weird things on candidates.
Yes.
That's why I will never actually run for public office, because I just don't want to.
Yeah.
No, I just don't want
or
that
people
kind of thing.
from your past that you thought, you know what? I have moved on from that person that was a bad influence in my life, like a negative.
And suddenly
influence.
there's an expose.
And suddenly, yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, that would not be good. And then who could follow in the footsteps of Gretchen Whitmer? I mean, someone's got to.
Someone is going to.
She's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's not going to be me.
It's not going to be me. Absolutely not me. Although I do like her lieutenant governor too. I think he's a really good lieutenant governor.
Yes, and then doesn't Pete Buttigieg live in Michigan
He
now?
does now.
So
lives
I've
in
been
Michigan.
thinking about that lately. That
would be cool.
Maybe he's got plans up his sleeve. I'm not sure,
Well,
but those are two really good candidates.
That would be really good because, you know, Buttigieg, he ran for president and he was really popular, but didn't make it.
Yeah.
But now, if he's living in Michigan, maybe he's got some plans like, okay, Gretchen's going to be done after this term, so he runs, he gets his residency, he runs, becomes governor, then he's more of a presidential
like a
material. You know?
Yeah, that could be.
Lynette and I are political strategists.
I like them both. Hire us for your next political campaign.
There you go. We can we'll be the commentators on it. So, all right. Well, there you have it. We have come to the end of this election edition of Word on the Nerd with Assistant Head of Adult Services, Lynette Suckow. And now the time has come to count the votes and find out what is on your mind today, Lynette. That is my last clue. So why don't you share with us the word? Lynette, what are we talking about today?
Well, elections.
Elections! What a surprise!
So I had my turn was to come for the entrance display, and Amy got a request from the League of Women Voters to do a display on voting, and I'm going, what? I had this wonderful display, and it was not on voting and elections. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to do a week of elections and a week of my own, because really the election stuff doesn't move that fast.
Right.
It's not a big, but I want people to be aware at the same time. So I did find a lot of books. We have way more books than this, but I found books that were pretty basic on elections. There is the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, which tells its opposing viewpoints. These are teen books, actually.
Oh, wow.
They used to be teen. And they tell about the philosophy of each party. Now, the Republican Party has changed a lot, and both of the parties are evolving as time goes on every year. But this one might be a little different. This is like the standard Republican Party from probably the 2000s.
Okay.
But
All right.
anyway, it's still good because it tells the basic philosophy, and I like that. You can see why why people are interested in either party.
Right.
So they're
Okay.
both have valid causes. And the Electoral College Primer, if you're confused about the Electoral College and who isn't.
And who isn't,
And
yeah.
so that's just a factual, interesting book. And this is also on the Electoral College, and it reviews some of the campaigns that were more notable. And so it's called Every Vote Counts. That was my thing.
Every vote counts.
Every vote counts. And so it tells about a campaign, the strategy, and what may have affected it negatively, positively, and the outcomes of those. So it's a little dated, but still really interesting material.
Okay.
This one is a newer one, Strength in Numbers, How Polls Work and Why We Need Them. And so this tells a little bit about polling strategy. I do not like hearing different polls every day.
I don't either. I thought I was the only one that, because everybody's like, oh, did you see the poll? And I'm like, yeah, but what does that really mean?
Exactly. They didn't ask me, that's for sure.
Exactly. It's like I always question, who are they asking?
Yes, me too. Same question. Who are they asking these questions? Because that's certainly not what my friends and I would be saying. you
Yeah,
know.
exactly. So,
I know, but it is good because it does tell about why they do it, and sometimes they do work. So
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. The 2016 election, all the polls were saying that Hillary Clinton was going to win, and it didn't happen. So.
Okay, here's a political statement.
Uh-oh.
That broke my heart. I wanted Hillary Clinton to win.
I-
So there you go.
Okay, and I will jump on board that wagon and say I was firmly in the Hillary Clinton camp. So
Man,
yeah,
that changed everyone's lives.
Yeah. It
but
really
that's
did.
all I'll say.
Yes.
Because at the library, we respect everyone's opinions.
Absolutely.
I'm just telling you what my opinion was at that time.
yeah.
And we do want everyone to feel like they have, like, their vote counts, and because it does.
Everybody's vote counts. Yeah. Everybody has the vote, and you should exercise it.
Yeah,
So.
definitely. So this is called One Person, One Vote, and this is a history of gerrymandering in America, which is changing the boundaries of voting districts to make sure that your candidate, who has more Democrats in that, now is going to win because it's a Democrat running, or the same for Republicans. They can maneuver the boundary lines and get the district over, tipped, tipped in their favor.
Yeah.
So
sadly, that's still going on.
Oh my gosh,
this day
it is still going on, and it has happened for a couple of centuries now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been happening so long. It's really bad that people think they have to maneuver that way, because then it's not fair anymore. It's not that your vote counts anymore. So anyhow, that's a really good book. It'll make you fiery when you read it, because
I think a lot of the books about this probably would, depending on how you feel. So if you're a gerrymanderer yourself, then you might. But exactly.
Most people aren't. Most people want a fair election.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is called Let the People Rule. This is interesting. Theodore Roosevelt and the birth of the presidential primary. Because he also was not favored by his party, and he wanted to run. And so he got some legislation that provided a primary to kind of narrow down the candidates before the final ones were sent up by their parties. So very interesting.
I did not know that.
Me neither.
When you think about it, I mean, we're so used to the primary and primary season and everything like that. But obviously, it didn't exist for at the beginning.
No.
So
and did let's see. I just read something about the city council that came in my water bill, that they are saying if a primary is just kind of insignificant, if it's only like the Board of Power and Light is running and there are 2 candidates for 2 seats, they're not going to do a primary. They're just going to let that happen, and they're going to save money. So it's a cost-cutting measure because that's expensive.
That is expensive. That always perplexes me on when I go and vote and I only see, vote for no more than 2, and there's only 2 there.
2.
And I'm like, what is the point of that?
Yeah.
And then there are people that run unopposed too, because I think the last couple of elections, the sheriff, Marquette County Sheriff, I think he's been running unopposed by anybody. So
yeah. Sometimes there's an opponent.
Yeah.
And so also we have this great big book by the New York Times with tons of pictures in it about just campaigns, famous campaigns throughout time, because the history of campaigns is very interesting. Once the campaign is over and you're not vested in it anymore.
Right. And you can look at it and go, what happened?
Yeah. And here's another book called Winning Political Campaigns. So it's a workshop. This one is good for if you're running for student council. I mean, it's good for every election. I'm kidding about student council because I was student council president. I remember making banners and talking to people, but not really campaigning, just being around and being my regular self. So that was fine. But my opponent, she was a little more nasty, and she had some of her signs that had to be taken down. And so then I was just going, what are you doing? Because you know what? We were friends. We were still in the same hometown and everything. But, when you're in that election thing, people start to get nuts.
Yes. It's the president of the student council. Really? I mean, honestly, do you have to dig up dirt on somebody for that? Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, this is Democracy for Hire, a history of American political consulting. Because nowadays, and it said that this started in the 50s or 30s.
Okay.
In the 30s, that political consultants became part of the voting process.
Okay.
And campaigns got bigger and bigger. There's also a book called Dark Money, The Hidden History of Billionaires Behind, which I'm sure used to be millionaires.
Yeah.
Behind the rise of the radical right. But it's not only the rise of the radical right. Money has been really flowing into politics on both sides, and it's not a good thing. So
I don't think that you can run for president without having millionaires behind
you. You do have to have millionaires. And why is that? I mean, why do we have to have that at this point?
It's sad. It
shouldn't, is sad.
But yeah.
Yep. And then this is called Judgment Days, and this is about President Johnson, President Lyndon B. Johnson, and his part in working with Martin Luther King Jr. on the Voting Rights of 1965. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of it. Voting Rights Act of 1965, where black people could vote, were given the full vote. So, I already went over that one. So, and these are women, or no, these are the black ones. So black voting has a lot of history to it. The Civil Rights Movement has a lot of history to it. And one person, no vote, voter suppression for black people and minorities and women if possible. Give us the ballot, the modern struggle for voting rights in America. And Stacey Abrams.
I love Stacey Abrams.
Our time is now. Yeah, she not only writes good material, she writes it beautifully.
Yeah. No, she's amazing. She really is.
And then the suffragette movement, lest we forget that.
Yes.
It says not for ourselves only. They were fighting for all the women, not
People
just
don't even
themselves.
realize that it's only been about 100 years since the women have had the right to vote.
Yes. Yeah, the 1920s.
I want to say 1919, 1920, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And Alice Paul, who I hadn't really heard of, was one of the suffragettes. That was a big name. And then, of course, this one is Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and then Susan B. Anthony. So there's a lot on that. One woman, one vote. Again, the suffragette history. And gilded suffragettes New York socialites who fought for women's rights. I miss the days when rich people volunteered their time to work for the common good. And again, that call to service. So I like this book especially because it highlights people who didn't have to go out and do things for the community or for women in general, but they did. So I really like that. So that's all the books I have on elections. There are more on the shelves.
So, well, and an important topic, especially at this time. You know, people. I don't care what part of the political spectrum you are. I mean, I would love it if you were my part of the political spectrum, but it doesn't really matter.
Just be informed
Just
when
be
you
informed
vote.
and go in and cast your ballot, not because of what somebody else told you to do, but because you've made some informed decisions.
Yes.
That's what's really important.
Yeah. And these books are in the 324s.
324s.
So it's in like the social structure of America section. So 324 is where you're going to find
and I'm
these.
sure that we'll see some books coming out in the next year or so about our current election.
Oh, yes.
You know
I'm
it's
sure.
coming. You know it's coming. All right. Well, there you have it. We've come to the end of this election edition of The Word with Assistant Head of Adult Services, Lynette Suckow, about books that are about the most important of our civic duties, which is voting. However, we can't let you get out of the Nerd Oval Office just yet, Lynette. First, we have to get a book recommendation from you, something that you think listeners should immediately run to the library and pick up off the shelf. All right, Lynette, what have you been reading that's good?
Well, I'm always reading stuff.
I know you are. I know you are. Are you like me? I have like 3 or 4 books going at the same time.
Yeah, an audiobook and then hopefully a regular print. Yeah, definitely. So this one I can't give as much of a recommendation for, but I did read it, and I even listened to it for a long time, not just in my car, but I also had it in the house because I kept going, oh, it was interesting, like kind of a page turner. But then at the end I was going, well, I don't know if I can recommend this, but I'm going to anyway.
Okay, all right.
It's The Funeral Ladies of Ellerie County.
Okay.
By Claire Swinarski. And one of the reasons I liked it is because it opens with a funeral, and the funeral ladies are just like the people at church that many of us grew up with, and they take over the food arrangements for funerals that happen at the church. And they are great cooks, and they're generous and with time and their food. And so that part I really liked. And so that happened. And then her granddaughter is the secondary character in this. She falls in love with the son of someone who just had a funeral, who hasn't been home in 20 years, and wanted to be buried back in this county because that's the place she really loved. And so, but then it brings in all these other elements that I thought maybe was too much for it. So the grandma, one of the funeral ladies, falls for a scam, an online scam.
Oh, boy.
And then they're trying to rescue her to get her house out of foreclosure. And so they come up with a community cookbook. So that's a nice idea. And it also gives everybody a purpose. And then the son, the boy that she's interested in, the granddaughter, he turns out to have PTSD because he was a medic and was around gunshots, and he just can't handle things, and so he wasn't being a good boyfriend, and so they finally had to break up, and then he had to have therapy. And is there any other thing that's coming on in here? I mean, there's a lot.
Book, yeah.
No, and there's another thing too, and I'm just going, this is too much to throw into this one book. So anyway, it ends hopefully, and it's just because it's supposed to be situated near Rhinelander. It was a little bit familiar, and it was very cute.
Okay.
So I did like that.
All right.
But you'd have to be in the right mood.
Okay. It's a recommendation with reservations.
Yes.
Let's put it that way.
So, yes. So now I have jumped into a book that I'm thinking maybe we want to consider for one of the book groups, the Heritage Room book group. And it's called Long Island by Colm Toibin. So it's an Irish author. And it is really interesting. The premise is that one day someone knocks at her door, this housewife, she's Irish. She is married to an Italian guy. It's a huge extended Italian family. But it wasn't him at the door. It was somebody whose wife had been having an affair with him and got pregnant. And now this man's going, you know what? This is your husband's baby. When it's born, I'm bringing it to your doorstep. And she's going, oh, no.
Oh, wow.
So that's the setup for the story. So I'm just 4 chapters into it. But it is also a page turner where you're going, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next?
Oh,
so
and
that
I love Colm too.
I have not read anything.
He's a great writer.
Yeah, and I didn't know if he was a man or a woman. But his name, I thought maybe a man.
Yeah, it's a man. He's a male Irish writer. Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's writing it's very good. So I am really enjoying this. It's a little slow right now, but when you listen to an audiobook, it's not as fast as I read. Yeah. And so that could have something to do with it. But they read every sentence, which I do not. Yeah. And so you get a little bit more out of the listening if it just takes longer. Yeah.
Well, okay, so that is Long Island by Colm Toibin.
Yeah.
And then The Funeral Ladies of Ellerie County by Claire Swinarski.
Yeah.
And one of them, called the Long Island book, you can recommend.
Yes.
But The Funeral Ladies,
you have to be in the mood
reservations on that
one,
but still entertaining.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I liked that it was a Wisconsin book.
Okay, well, there you go. So there you have it, fellow library nerds. Lynette's recommendations of some things that you should pick up off the shelf. And we have come to the end of this voting episode of Library Nerds with Words. I want to thank Lynette Suckow, Assistant Head of Adult Services here at Peter White Public Library, for stopping by Nerd Mart today. Come back next week when I will be sitting down with one of our newest additions to the PWPL team, Bella Markham, and she's the new local history coordinator, and we're going to find out a little bit about what she does in that role. Until that time, everyone, stay nerdy. Thank you for listening to Library Nerds with Words, Peter White Public Library's weekly podcast, giving you the word on what's cool at the library. The theme for the podcast is Happy Clappy by John Bartman, used courtesy of Pixabay. This episode was written and produced by Martin Acketts and sponsored by Peter White Public Library. Until next week, pick up a good book, listen to some good music, watch a good movie, attend a great event, and remember, library nerds are the coolest people around.